You do always end up calling me right as I'm about to do an intro for a video. So as punishment,
strangest coincidence. Yeah.
So as punishment, you're gonna do for the goldfish.
Today, Alec is going to be carving a little goldfish. It's gold, but more like an orange color. It's kind of, you can see a lot of tooling marks. That's because he's not that, he's still he's getting better.
I'm gonna end it at that. Thanks, dude. All right, folks. Today we're gonna be carving a goldfish in basswood. This is just a 1x1 project. If it would go in focus, there we go. And like Kenny said, it's pretty straightforward. It's nothing too complicated. The hardest part is keeping these little guys from not busting off, and you'll see they do quite a bit. But it's a lot of fun. But without any more ado, let's get into it. Hey folks, today's sponsor is Fundamentals of Wood Carving. It's an online resource that I started in order to help folks with carving realistic faces. It's a very cost-effective way of learning, and it gives you over 78 plus videos. I add a new project every month at a minimum. Almost always I add 2 or more. But the point is that it gives you new content to consume while also going back and looking through, again, the 70-something plus videos that are available at the time of recording this ad. Again, there are 2 videos added each month, so go check that out, and the link will be in the description below. Alright, now to start, I've got a 1x1 that's 4 inches long. I've cut a bunch of these out, and I'm going to use a really rough drawing that I created of a goldfish. It's going to be kind of an elongated version of a goldfish. So to start, I'm going to use the Beavercraft roughing knife. Actually, let's go ahead and go over the tools that we're using first. So I've got the Beavercraft. This is a really sweet little blade for the money. It's $13, so there's proof that you don't need to spend a lot of money to get a good knife. This is a great one. Flexcut makes one that's excellent as well. Definitely a notch up from this Beavercraft. You're going to pay over twice the price for it. This is the detail knife, the skewed detail knife. Their straight detail knife is great as well. Might be a little easier to control than the skewed one. They're just great knives, the Flexcuts. But these Beavercraft are also really decent for less than half the cost of those. So if you're trying carving out for the first time, these come sharp, and I do recommend them. So anyway, without further ado, let's get started. So the whole length of the goldfish that I'm going to carve is going to be about 3 inches. It's going to give us a little extra material to grip onto, and just I feel more comfortable with that. The other thing to keep in mind is wear a glove. It can be a kitchen fiberglass, like cutting glove, culinary glove. You can order those really cheaply online. I think I'd link that in the description. You can use a carving Kevlar glove that's ideal. None of these will prevent you from stabbing yourself, but they will prevent you from cuts. Another thing you can do is tape your fingers. There's medical gauze, different types of slip-on fingery things you see in a recent Doug Linker video, and that's a great idea as well. So that said, I'm going to use a V-tool. In addition to that, this is it's about a 60-degree V, 3mm V. I'm also going to have my strop handy, as it's always good to have a strop nearby, I believe. It's necessary for me when I'm doing a whittle to have the ability to strop, because a lot of times the tool will get dull. Just a stubby pencil. I'm going to use a toothbrush to kind of brush things off. If you can't get access to a toothbrush, you're going to have to go to a very specialty wood carving store. I think they call it Walgreens, Rite Aid, Walmart, Amazon. Any of those specialty wood carving stores will have what's called, you can write this down, toothbrush, spelled as in toothbrush. I'm sorry, getting snarky here. Anyway, without further ado, let's get into the project. So to start, again, this is a beginner level project. It's going to be super easy. Nothing about this is going to be like crazy hard or necessarily even like realistic, which is a little of a departure, but it's like, might as well have fun with it. So I really like the idea of marking center line on the piece. You'll see Doug do that in his videos. I do that in my bark carving instruction. Most artists tell you that if you're doing a sketch and you're starting out, establishing a center line is going to keep everything in proportion, and so that's a really, really good idea. So I'm going to do that. I like the idea of doing that on all axes, if you will, just to make sure everything's straight. Not as important that you do it on the sides, more important that you do it down the center. So this will go down his back and his mouth and his, you know, his belly, all that. So do that, mark that center. It's going to help, you know, help you keep things in proportion. All right, so the next thing I'm going to do is go ahead and start to taper the head. So the first thing I want to do is remove this material. You can kind of see I drew roughly a ship face, I can't say it, a fish shape. Even that I can't say it. And so this area is going to come down. So I'm going to start by cutting the corners off. And a lot of times, you know, it's a good idea to take any sharp corners down just in general to keep from stabbing yourself, because it kind of hurts your hands if you're not doing that. A little chip out there, not a big deal. This is, remember, this last inch is going to be scrap for us to hold on to. So I'm just taking this down. And the reason I start at the corners, it's just a lot easier to start at a corner and remove a little bit of material than it is to, you know, try and remove it all at once. And again, this Beavercraft knife, although really, you know, cheap, $13 on Amazon right now, is really decent. So I do recommend it. I do like it a lot. So, and they're not paying me to promote it, so there's that. They should be. I'm just kidding. Alright, so I'm just kind of, you see that? Getting kind of an arrow kind of point to it. And keep in mind too, guys, it's really, really helpful to have just a couple of pictures nearby when you're carving. I have my phone out and I've got a couple of pictures off to the side just for a reference, because I'm just shooting from the hip at this point. I'm just going to kind of be participating in this in real time as you guys are. So hopefully I help you with basic ideas, but at the same time, we're just having fun together, so no pressure. Alright, so I'm just going to, again, kind of round the nose. I'm taking a little bit more off of the top part here to make room for his fin, this top fin. And already you're going to notice that I do not know my anatomical fish terms here. So I'm just going to be referring to everything as a fin. I think the top fin's the dorsal fin. I don't know. See, it's not even worth me butchering it. So I'm just going to do my best to stay away from using anatomical terms when it comes to the fish. Alright, so I'm just creating a little scoop here. Just a little tiny scoop right at the top. And you'll see that I'll start to actually narrow things a little bit. So I'm going to start by narrowing the top here, taking the corners off of the top. Just deciding this is the top here, so I'll just label that here. Top of the fish. And I'm just taking these corners off, like so. And you could carve the fins separately and attach them. I'm just going to kind of elongate the whole body and, you know, allude to them. They won't be that big, these big, pretty, fancy goldfish kind of features, but it'll be pretty good. So now I'm going to narrow the head up just a bit. Okay. And I'm working towards that center line. Of course, you're going to lose your center line, and it may make you feel better to just redraw it on if you think of it. Just like so. Get my lamp pointing this way. It's a little dark on this side. Hopefully that helps. Yeah, a little better. Alright, so we've taken a little off the top of his head, narrowed it up a little bit. Now I'm going to come over on the back side here and take this area down as well. So I could have just continued that cut, just taking it in small bites. Alright, like so. I'm not going to round the bottom just yet because I want to leave room for some fins, and that's where that V-tool is going to come in handy. So I'm just going to narrow the top here a little bit more, take the hard corners off it, like so. Alright, see that? Taper it down to the square bottom. Again, I'm not going to round that bottom off just yet. Just tapering it in. Rounding that head. Like so. Alright, so now we're going to kind of dig in to get the fins. I'm going to come back, let's see, grab my ruler here, just a little bit more, a little less rather than an inch from here. Down is when these bottom fins are going to start. So we'll have them go, let's say, looking at my reference here, yeah, about like that. Those will be the fins. Okay, and we can always transcribe that over to this side. That'll be the start of the fins here. And of course the end of the fin, draw that on the bottom too, give us an idea of where this one will end. Alright, you can see that. Hopefully that line's dark enough. Alright, so I'm going to come up top of this fin, like so, and then around, and then make a cut in. Like so. See that? Just cutting around. Same thing over here, so I'm going to come over, angle this cut, try and mimic the same idea. Like so. Really narrowing underneath the belly. And soon enough we'll be able to kind of round things out here. Now again, I'm really doing a simplified version. I'm not sure that he'll be anywhere near close to anatomically correct. We're just going to really simplify him as much as we can. So now I'm coming in at the other side of that fin, like so. And creating an angled cut. Right? So coming in just like that. You can see that? The angles are making up what is soon to be the fin. And then I'll actually come in here and create a little groove underneath to separate them out even more. Alright, just like so. And the same thing underneath this side, so connecting those lines. And let me see what we got there. See how that kind of comes in? Very good. Okay. There's a second row of, I don't know what they're called, fins here as well. Let's catch those. So we're just going to use the this little kind of down here, just past, let's see, it's about the 2.5 inches down from the top of the head is where this little guy ends. And it's just going to hop up about 1/2 inch, like so. And the same thing over here. We'll just connect these lines just so we're clear on where this starts and ends. Just create a little bit of a half circle. See that? Okay. Alright, I zoomed in a little. It was a little bit fuzzy there. But I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to outline this. And I said 1/2 inch up, but it's actually going to be a little bit less than that. Like so. See that? And the same thing here. Just tracing that shape. Coming in like so. Again, just popping that out and then connecting underneath. Okay, so again, you know, one of the big problems that people have with the Beavercraft knives is that they have a thicker blade, you know, thicker steel back here. You can see that, you know, to some folks that might be a downside for a simple reason, and that is that it's a little bit harder to push the steel blade through the wood when it's a thicker blade. And so, yeah, my issue with it is that it could be a little bit thinner, especially at the tip, but at the same time I say that, I also don't mind that it's a little bit more rigid. I think that's a good thing. And so I don't have a problem mentioning or recommending Beavercraft, especially at this price point. Another advantage of it being thicker is, again, less likely to break or bend, and also a little easier to push on. I like the ability to push on the blade if I have to. Typically won't have to do that because it's such a short blade, but it is nice to have the option. So I digress. So yeah, again, about the inch and, let's say, 1.25 inch mark, I'm going to start the top fin. So I'm just going to mark that with my hand, like so. It's going to be right about there. So I'm going to actually push this material back a little bit more. There's the focus, sorry about that. Had a little too close to the camera. And that's going to be the top of the fin, and that's going to taper down, oh, we'll say about 3/4 inch is where it's going to end, kind of skating down to the body of the fish. And then I'm going to narrow, taking a chunk out of here. This is, yeah, say about 2 inches and 1/4 down from the tip of the fish to the backside is where it's really, the whole kind of body is going to taper and then meet the back fins. Okay, I'm going to narrow this as well. Narrow everything at that 2.25 mark from the head back. And of course, it's going to be narrow. The fish itself is going to be pretty narrow at the back side here. As it meets its fin, the body narrows. So, take your time here. Don't rush these cuts. Just because you have to remove a lot of material does not mean that it's a good idea to try and remove a lot of material at once. Notice I'm making small cuts, and you should probably even be making smaller cuts if you're newer to wood carving. And you need to really take your time, focus on getting your knife razor sharp with the strop. Even after it comes from the factory, not a bad idea to do that, to give it a little polishing. Depending on the manufacturer, of course. Some guys, some manufacturers do a great job of sharpening right out the gate, and you don't need to worry about it. So, there's that. Okay, so this is going to be a thin little goldfish, but he'll be kind of cute. Alright, so I kind of I pushed these guys a little too far back, I'm noticing based on my picture. So I'm going to take the, let's just say, take these back to about the 2-inch mark, leave a little gap there. So I'm just going to shorten up these backmost lower fins that we were creating earlier. Pardon the adjustment here if you've already gone through the work of making that. Alright, that's a little better. Okay, so I'm going to make sure that there's a V under here, like so. This is those hind legs, those hind, how very Darwin of me, the hind fins, like so, just splitting those, spreading those out, and then tapering, kind of undercutting underneath there. Okay. Alright. Going to establish the bottom here with a V-cut. The bottom, the sort of largest fins off to the side that we left this bottom material for. Just coming in like so, with a V-channel as we did over here. Just removing a little bit more material, just narrowing the fish overall. Really will make those fins stand out. Okay, I'm going to do the same up top here with this top fin. I don't know, is it the dorsal fin? Who knows? It seems right, but what do I really don't know. The last person to ask. Okay. I'm just kind of finding the overall shape of the fish, narrowing that, kind of making that head a little bit stubbier. And just finding the shape. Don't want to break that off. Might have to glue that back on because it looks like that came off. Let's fix that. Alright, I glued the piece back on. Now I can actually utilize my V-tool to hopefully prevent the re-chipping of that spot. Okay. Alright. I'm going to taper the head just a little bit more, meaning kind of narrow it down a little bit. And I'm also going to cut a V underneath his body, like so. Pop that chip out, like so. Okay. Cut a little bit of this fin out, the back side, a little bit of an undercut, like so. So I'm taking this section out here, and the same thing over here. Like so. Alright. Coming up in the belly as well, removing some of that. Narrowing some down on the other side of the back. And yeah, narrowing off the this junction between the tail and the body. Same thing over here as well. Do a little opening for the mouth. Like so. Take a little scoop out of each side of the face. Let's see if I can get that in focus. Sorry about that. Okay. Alright, just shaping up the mouth a little, narrowing it up. Alright, I'm going to make a little groove underneath the mouth like so. I'm going to do a little bit of an undercut right underneath the fins here and here. You want to be careful to try to create the illusion of separation of the fins from the body, where in reality we can't create as much of a separation because the fins will break off. Right, okay. Narrow the body yet a little bit more as it comes down, like so. And the same thing over here. Alright. That was a good time to create the stop cut for the end of the tail. So I'm coming back, say about an inch from the transition point of the body to the tail, and just creating a little bit of a scoop cut just to indicate where it's ending. I could make a stop cut here, but it's just a little bit more fun to make a scoop cut. Sometimes that's the only reason you need is you're enjoying it more, I guess, right? Alright, so I'm just going to go around the whole thing, reduce the material. Okay, not take it down so much that there's nothing to grab onto, but alright, and I'm going to take a little bit more off of one side, because there's actually a kind of a staggered kind of look to the goldfish's tail. It splits in the middle, and there's one side that's higher and one side that's lower. So I'm going to take some off of the back here, like so. Okay. Alright, I'm going to make a cut underneath here, the other side of the tail, and just slowly get to separating out the upper from the lower side of the tail here. Alright. The question is, we gotta glue that back on. Probably should. Alright, so again, this is going to be a very simple project, so we're not going to fully detail it. We're just going to do the best that we can in getting it in its form, and then we're going to give it just a light coloring of paint. And you know what, I'm actually just going to use a saw to cut this off. I could use my, well, I'll use my knife, why not? We're here. We're here right now, might as well. Some of you may not have a knife who are starting out. And for those of you who don't, we'll just use the knife, just pare it down, is all. Just thinning the tail and creating that little kind of separation, or that kind of angle. Alright, so I'm just slowly working this body down, and as I move through the wood I'll notice that the tool sometimes kind of slows down, and that is a great time to take the blade back to the polisher. Otherwise you'll end up pushing really hard and then you'll end up losing control of the blade. In fact, I just nicked myself with the blade off camera when I was pushing on it really hard to try and get a big chunk off. First of all, I was rushing, and I gave myself a little cut that I was able to glue up. Not a big deal, but keep in mind that it's important to keep this thing nice and polished. Son of a gun, this thing keeps breaking off. I'm tempted just to leave it off, honestly. Alright, I glued the piece back on, and we're going to try not to mess with it too much. One tool that I didn't expect to introduce, but I think might be really helpful, is a little gouge of some kind, maybe a 6mm gouge. Just to clean up the transition area in the Goldfish tail to the body. It's just be nice to have a smooth transition. That's part of the reason I keep chipping this area out, is I don't have that. So if you can introduce that to your arsenal, it will help. Right. Okay. Come in with the gouge and just clean up. Okay. So I'm going to give the fins a little bit of texture. Carve these eyes in. I'm going to draw them in first. Get these gills in as well. And call it a day here shortly. So let's draw those gills in, like so. I'm going to put the V-tool here. Okay. Same thing here. I use the V-tool. Okay. Next we'll get the eyes. We'll draw those in. Something like that. See how that looks from the top. You can see it's not proportional, symmetrical. Alright, just adjusting my light here. So let's see, which one do I like better? I like the placement of this one. I think I like the placement of this one better, so I'm going to move this one back. And it's totally okay to exaggerate the eye size as well. Make them a little bit bigger. Animals with larger eyes always seem to be a little bit smarter. So, okay, so I'm going to go around the whole parameter of the eye. Set those in. The same thing on the other side. Alright, and we got his eyes in. Okay, now I'm going to round the eyeball. Taking the knife and just cutting from the inside of the eyeball to the edges, and if anything sticks, like a little hair or a fuzz or a chip, we'll come back in with the, we'll go over with the knife, go over the round, the part of the eye that we established with the V tool. I'm laughing at myself because I'm not finding the words. I'm going to take the skin behind the, break that fin off again, set that aside. Sometimes it's the way the cookie crumbles, folks. Things bust off, and you just gotta move on, not let it bother you, because it's kind of the nature of carving, is things will break off when you don't want it to. And I'm sort of ministering to myself here because it's just so common, and yet it still is such a bummer. when you have something like that break off that's been, you know, breaking off consistently for the past, you know, hour or two. And it might be beneficial to wait on reattaching it towards the end in the case of something really fragile like this. And I'm going to put this on. Just hope it doesn't fall off. Be really sensitive to it. And aside from that, I'm going to, I thought I was going to use the V-tool, but I actually think it might be best to use a veiner. I'm going to, yeah. Well, I could try the V-tool. Let's see how this does. Yeah, it's not bad. It's just a little bit sharp. I'd almost rather use, because this is actually, a veiner is, sorry, a V-tool is just a veiner with flat sidewalls, a really tiny veiner with flat sidewalls. So part of me wanted to try a little bit larger of a veiner to make these lines a little less defined and hard, but I don't think that it's a bad thing that it's a little bit more defined. And sure, it's looking less like a goldfish and more kind of like a, I don't know, like a carp or something, but I guess goldfish are related to carp, so I don't know. We're not too worried about anatomical correctness here. Again, we're just having fun. It's something to cut your teeth on if you're starting out in wood carving and you want to give something a shot that you haven't done, you know, that you haven't done before. Your favorite goldfish lover might enjoy. So I'm just creating parallel lines here, just along the fins, just as you'd imagine fins to have. Very gently going to detail these back ones as well. Like so. Very carefully do this one here. It started to come off once again, so I'm just going to do a little bit more glue. It's just that cross grain is just so fragile. Alright, now I'm going to do the same thing to the tail. I could thin the tail out just a little bit more. It's a little bit bulky. Set this on the table and rest it there so I'm safer. Not as likely to cut myself if it slips or when it slips. Okay. Oh boy, the grain is not happy with me. This is a good time to grab a gouge. Grab a gouge. I'm going to grab that veiner we used in the elf video. This is a 3mm veiner. Just come in. Oh no! Alright, I'm going to stop this video so I can fix it. Alright, and it's glued back, and now we're just going to come alongside the tail and create these grooves. I'm going to use the veiner. It's just a little bit easier to move material. I'm also trying to thin it at the same time as creating some grooves. And really I don't want to mess with it a whole lot after that, just being that everything is so fragile at this point. So just creating some grooves in the tail, and that's plenty. Alright, and just to button this up, I'm going to go around the whole mouth with that 3mm veiner. Again, using tools that we didn't think we'd use here. just to create those fish lips. And then I'll taper the face into those lips like so. Just like that. I think we're ready for some paint. You could do a little sanding on this. You know, if you really wanted to refine it, you could try and get rid of any of the planes that are kind of flat areas by cutting edges off. But for the most part, we're pretty close to where we want to be. I'm just going to clean them up a little bit, and then we'll give them a little gold coloring. Alright, so I've got some orange watercolor mixed up here. I've allowed this thing to dry. I sprayed it with a water-based polyurethane from Minwax, a spray again from a canister. Again, it's dried, and I'm adding a little touch of orange. The advantage to the watercolor is it's already kind of semi-opaque, and so you can see the grain through it. So I'm mixing just a little bit of the yellow, the medium yellow, with the straight orange to get a yellowish, goldish tone. And as soon as I'm happy with that, I'm going to start to apply it. I'm going to add a little bit more water. Seems a little bit too thick. Alright, that looks pretty good. I'm going to start on the top of his head. Or her head, I should say. Who knows? I don't know how to tell the difference between a male and a female goldfish, to be honest. I'm going to mix a little bit more white, a little tiny bit of white with this red to make kind of a pinkish tone or reddish pink tone. I want a touch of orange in there to kind of mellow it out because it's a little bit too kind of neon looking. I'm going to add a little bit more red to that. And we're getting close to kind of a reddish tone. I'm just going to take a little bit of that reddish tone, and that's going to go on his head. Oh, brush fell. Gotta wipe that off. That's why we keep a paper towel nearby. Alright. Might add just a little bit of red here at the tail transition area. That reddish orange, and then I'm going to go back to the yellow, clean my brush off to the kind of gold, I guess. I might even go a little bit more into the red for this kind of in between, and then kind of do a little blending, like so. Nothing wrong with a little blending. Like so. Just a touch of the yellowish orange. Okay, so I'm just going over the whole fish with that orange color. I did a little bit of red on the head, of course, as I already kind of laid out. And now I'm just kind of going to take a bit of this white that I've separated out from the orange. I'm going to clean my brush a little better because it's dirty. And I'm going to thin it nice and thin. I want it to be, again, see-through, kind of translucent. If it's too white, it just won't look good. It'll look kind of plastic and fake. I'm going to take that white and I'm going to go in like so, just kind of getting a little bit of the white in there. And in fact, what I realized is that we actually could have put a little bit more of a part in her, in this little guy's fins, or Yeah, fins. Tail. My goodness, what is happening in my brain? Alright, so just adding a little bit of the white to the tail. I'm going to add a little bit of white to the top fins here, bottom fins. I'm going to add the white to the body underneath as well. Give it a colder kind of white tone. Okay. Get a little bit of more of white here. Get a little bit more white on the edges here. Brighten it up just a touch. Alright, and take a touch bit of the orange. It looks like I missed part of the fins here. And just like that, we've got a pretty decent little paint job. Okay, I'm going to add just a touch of black to the center of his eyes using a round brush. Alright, I'm going to take the black with a round brush and just give it a dab. Give him an eye. And the same thing on the other side. Alright, and then once that dries, I'm going to take a little white and create a little highlight. I'll go back over it once again. So clean that brush off. I'll let that dry. Okay. Just a touch for a highlight. You can thin that down a little bit as well if you're worried about it blending in with the base. That'll make it a little bit more liquid. There we go. A little bit of light there bouncing off of the eye. There it is. There it is, alright. Got a little highlight in the eye. And there you have it, folks. It's a fairly straightforward project. It had some twists and turns. It was not always easy. Little parts can break, and so it makes it a challenge, but overall, I'd say it's a fun little project. Hope you enjoyed this guy, this little dude. And if you give it a shot, I would love to see you post it on the internet, Instagram, Facebook. Tag me, and I'm looking forward to seeing your handiwork. Alright guys, see you in the next one. Alright, quickly in conclusion, if you're interested in learning more about carving, but specifically carving the front side of a noggin, the realistic face, the human face, male, female, old and young, check out the online school. As you can see, there are videos scrolling by me as I talk, and those are all of the projects available on the school right now. 78 something around there, close to 80 videos, instructional based on the human face. So check that out in the description, or there's also a little pop-up link here.